Miss Vivienne Alderton had spent 22 years learning the vocabulary of every feeling she was not permitted to have. Loneliness, she called restlessness. Resentment, she called fatigue. The ache that arrived every time she passed the conservatory window. That one she had never named. Simpler not to look. She looked, that morning. The White Queen had fallen sometime in the night. It lay on its side at the board's edge, one corner of the felt base grazing the stone. Vivienne stood at the glass. Light came through in long pale stripes across the table. She counted them. 4. She counted again. She did not go in. She had not gone in the night before either. When she'd heard Thomas in the back corridor. She'd stood at the dark window and listened to his footsteps slow as he passed the conservatory door, then continued toward the east wing. He always slowed at that door. She had noticed this the way one notices things one has decided not to examine. Agnes found her still there. You haven't dressed. Agnes used this tone for observations doing double duty. I'm aware. Lady Constance has sent a note. 11 o'clock. Vivienne turned. Below, hooves on stone, low voices, the iron pump that had needed replacing for 3 years. She had memorized that sound the way one memorises something one did not intend to. Has something happened? Agnes asked. Agnes wore the expression of someone trying to locate the beginning of a conversation already in progress. Nothing, Vivienne said. Nothing has happened. The pump went silent. The yard had gone quiet in the way it only did when someone was leaving. She learned the rest at breakfast. Her father mentioned it between the marmalade and the post, the way he mentioned weather. A post in Northumberland. A breeding estate. Considerable opportunity for a man of that skill. The arrangements, he said, were nearly settled. Vivienne set down her knife. When does he leave? Fortnight's end. He turned a page. She picked her knife back up. Finished her toast. Folded her napkin with the precision she reserved for things that required controlling. Through the morning room window, the conservatory was visible. The chess table was still there. She did not look at it. She did not go to the conservatory that morning. She went the morning after. And the one after that. Slowing at the door each time, then continuing, the way one continues past a room where something irreversible has already been decided. On the 4th morning, Thomas was there. He was standing at the window with his back to her, a cup in one hand, looking at the yard the way men look at things they are preparing to leave. Vivienne stopped in the doorway. Her feet, apparently, had made a decision without consulting her. He turned before she could reverse it. Miss Alderton, Mr. Keller, this had always been sufficient. It had never, until this moment, felt like a closed door. She sat across from the board. The White Queen was still on its side. Neither of them had touched it. I heard about Northumberland, she said. Yes. It's a considerable opportunity. Her father's words. They tasted the same in her mouth. He sat. Moved the Black Knight. Forward and left, a move that made no sense unless you knew what he was planning 4 steps ahead. Vivienne had learned, over 7 years, that Thomas always knew what he was planning 4 steps ahead. She moved her bishop. He looked at it longer than the position warranted. You're not protecting your queen, he said. I know. Someone called his name from the yard. He stood, set his cup down with the care of a man who has decided something, and left without finishing the game. She sat there alone, counted the panes in the glass ceiling. 31. Did not count them again. She told herself she went to the north paddock for air. Thomas was working with the gray mare, moving with the particular patience he reserved for things that were frightened. He saw her coming. Did not stop. She stood at the fence. May I ask you something? You're going to regardless, he said, not unkindly. Why Northumberland? Why not?
Well,
That isn't an answer. He brought the mare to a stop, stroked her neck. The same motion, the same place. Vivienne had seen him do this 1,000 times. She had never before noted that she had seen him do this 1,000 times. You've been here your whole life, she said. Yes, that doesn't give you pause. He looked at her. The mare shifted. He steadied her without looking. Pausing, he said, isn't always the same as stopping. She cataloged this sentence. The way she cataloged things she intended to examine later, which was the way she cataloged things she intended never to examine at all. She stayed at the fence for another quarter hour, saying nothing in particular, meaning considerably more. When she left, not looking back required an effort she found disproportionate to the situation. Agnes was waiting at the garden gate. Well, we discussed the mare, Vivienne said, and walked through before Agnes could make use of her expression. Lady Constance took her tea with the deliberateness of a woman who had learned that being waited for was its own authority. You look tired, Vivienne dear. The season does take its toll on girls who think too much. I'm quite well, thank you. Of course you are. The cup set down with infinite care. Lord Harwick asked after you at the Pembrokes. He said you seemed elsewhere. The word landed precisely. I've always thought, Lady Constance continued, that the wisest thing a family can do is ensure a young woman's environment reflects her future, not her past. A glance toward the window. The stable block just visible. Which is why I was glad to assist with the Northumberland arrangement. A word to Lord Pennock was all it required. Your family's generosity made the rest possible. Vivienne finished her tea, held the cup with both hands and finished every drop, because setting it down required a steadiness she was occupied with locating. How very thoughtful, she said. In the hallway, Agnes caught her arm. I thought your family arranged it. The letter. I saw it on the correspondence table. Your mother's stationery. Which letter? Agnes's expression shifted. The shift of someone realizing they have answered a question that wasn't supposed to be asked. I thought you knew, she said. Vivienne went upstairs and sat at her window for a long time. Below, the gray mare moved in slow circles. Patient. Coming back to something despite everything. The letter had been filed under Lady Constance's name. Her mother's stationery, yes, but a different hand entirely. Precise, admiring, and written by someone who knew exactly what Lord Pennock needed to hear. Vivienne folded it. Replaced it. Went to the conservatory. Thomas arrived 7 minutes later and stopped at her expression. You knew, she said. I knew a recommendation had been made. Did you know who made it? He reached across and set the white queen upright. A small, careful motion. It didn't change the position. Thomas. His name. She hadn't used it aloud in years. The sound surprised both of them. There is a version of this where I stay, he said quietly. I've looked at it carefully. The cost is yours, not mine. That makes it impossible. You don't get to decide the cost for me. No. He met her eyes. But I've watched you manage every room, every expectation this house produces. I won't be the thing that makes all of it come undone. Your move, he said, quietly. Not about the board. She could not move. Agnes appeared in the doorway, found something urgent in the opposite direction, and withdrew. Lord Harwick called on Thursday. He was attentive, patient, appropriately interested. He remembered her preference for the north garden. He had, by every observable measure, prospects. Vivienne answered every question correctly. Poured his tea at precisely the right moment. She was by all appearances present. She was looking at the window. At the glass itself. 3 bubbles in the lower left corner of the old pane. She had spent enough time lately with someone who looked at things as they actually were, and the habit apparently was contagious. Lord Harwick was speaking about drainage improvements. Took 2 seasons, but the yield the following year was. Forgive me. She stopped. The drainage. Yes. 2 seasons. He smiled with the patience of a man who had decided she was worth it. That evening, her mother sat at the edge of the chair in her room. He will ask. Before the season ends. I know. Whatever you have spent the last 2 weeks looking at through every window in this house, put it somewhere sensible. A pause. Fortnight's end, Vivienne. The door did not close fully. Through the gap, the house settled. Old beams, the second stair that had always needed attention. And from the stable block faintly, the mare. Moving. Coming back to the weight of something, despite everything. Vivienne did not sleep. She knows what she's supposed to do. She's always known. Stay with her. She found him in the conservatory at 9:30. The house was quiet. The candle on the chess table had burned lower than it should have. He was already there. She had stopped being surprised by this. She sat. Neither of them moved a piece. How do you leave a place you've spent your whole life? She asked. She meant it as a practical question. She was aware as she said it that it was not a practical question at all. Thomas looked at the board for a long time. Then he moved his knight, a move she hadn't seen coming, which meant he had been planning it for longer than this game. You don't think about the leaving, he said. You think about what you're carrying out with you. She looked at the knight. Then at his hands, still resting on the edge of the table. And what are you carrying? He was quiet for long enough that the candle moved in some draft she couldn't locate. He looked up at her. Not the careful, managed look she had come to expect. Something else. Something that had slipped past whatever gate he usually kept it behind. You know what I'm carrying, he said. The words sat between them on the table like a piece neither of them could take back. He stood, moved to the window. She watched him do it. The candle burned. Neither of them spoke. Outside, the yard was entirely still. Thomas. Don't. Quietly. Please don't. She did not. He stayed at the window with his back to her until the silence had gone on long enough to mean something permanent. Then he left. She sat with the board and the lowered candle and the knight still where he'd placed it. She did not touch it. Lady Constance was at the Whitmore dinner. Of course she was. She found Vivienne between the fish course and the remove in the precise geometry of the long table where withdrawal was impossible. I've been meaning to ask, she said to no one and everyone, whether you've given Lord Harwick any indication. He is remarkably patient, but even patience has a natural limit. She touched her wineglass. One doesn't wish to see him look elsewhere. That would be such a waste. The table heard. The table always heard. He is a man of considerable discernment. Lady Constance continued. He could have his pick, that he has waited this long for. Well, a small, gentle pause for whatever it is he's waiting for. Vivienne held her fork. The tines were silver, slightly cold, very specific. She counted them. 4. You are very kind to concern yourself, she said. One simply hates to see a girl of your qualities overlooked. Again. The table absorbed this. Later, in the carriage, her mother did not speak. This was the loudest thing she could have done. Vivienne looked out at the dark road and understood with absolute clarity that the window Lady Constance had described was real and closing, and that by tomorrow morning the Whitmore dinner would be the reason it closed. And still, the only thing she could locate underneath all of it was the knight on the chess table, and the words before it, and the gate that had slipped open just once before he'd shut it again. Thomas was leaving on Friday. She knew this the way she knew the second stair creaked. Not because anyone had told her recently, but because the house had rearranged itself around the fact. The east corridor had been quiet for 3 days. The gray mare had a new handler. Thursday morning. Agnes brought her tea and did not speak, which meant Agnes had already heard something. What time does the coach leave? Vivienne asked. 8. Agnes set the cup down. He was at the conservatory last night. After midnight. Vivienne was already standing. Vivienne, Agnes's voice. If you go now. Lady Constance will hear by afternoon. Lord Harwick will hear by evening. Your mother. I know. Then you know what I know exactly what I'm doing. She said it more firmly than she felt it. I know the cost of going. I also know the cost of staying upstairs while he picks up that board and puts it away forever. Agnes said nothing. This was, Vivienne had learned, Agnes's form of blessing. She went down. The conservatory was cold, the early light sharp across the stone floor. Thomas was there, coat on, the board in his hands, pieces laid out on the cloth beside it, packing it away. She had known this was coming. Knowing had not prepared her. Leave it, she said. He stilled. Leave the board. He set it down, slowly, turned. She crossed to the table, picked up the white queen, still upright where he'd set it, held it. 7 years, she said. I've named everything I've ever felt in this house except this. I called it habit. I called it familiarity. She set the queen down in the center of the board. I was wrong about what it was. He looked at her for a long time. The gate from 2 nights ago. She could see him deciding whether to open it again. Vivienne. Her name. He had not used it since they were children. You understand what you're saying? I understand exactly what I'm saying. The Whitmore dinner is already in the past. Lord Harwick is a man I respect and cannot marry. He was very still. Your mother will need time, she said. I know. I'm not asking you to solve it. I'm asking you to stay while I do. The house settled around them. The second stair. The east beams. All of it ordinary. All of it hers. All of it suddenly, irrevocably. Also this. Thomas reached across the table, did not touch her hand, touched the board beside it, and moved his rook. Your move, he said. She moved her queen. Neither of them spoke for a long time after that. The conservatory light had shifted. Longer, lower, coming through the glass in a single pale stripe across the table between them. The candle from the night before was still there, burned nearly to nothing. Thomas looked at the board, then at her. This doesn't become simple, he said. I know. Your mother. The season. Harwick. I know all of it. I need to know you know. She met his eyes. I have known the cost of every decision I've made in this house for 7 years. I have been very careful and very correct and very absent. I don't want to be absent anymore. He looked at her the way he had looked at the gray mare, like something that had come back to the weight of something, despite everything. Like this meant something. The candle went out. Neither of them moved. By Friday morning, the Whitmore table had spoken. By Friday afternoon, it had reached her mother's morning callers. By Saturday, it had become the kind of fact that required no source. It simply existed, the way certain truths exist once they have been released into a room and cannot be recalled. Miss Alderton had made her position clear. Lord Harwick withdrew quietly, with the dignity of a man who had always known, somewhere beneath his patience, that he had been waiting for something that was never going to arrive. Lady Constance called on Monday. Vivienne received her in the morning room. They had tea. Lady Constance said several careful things about the nature of impulse and the short memory of salons. She did not say anything unkind. She did not need to. As she left, she paused at the door. I did think of you as mine, you know, she said. In my way. Vivienne looked at her, the careful architecture of her, the one unguarded moment in 3 seasons, and believed her. I know, she said. That was the trouble. Lady Constance left. Vivienne did not watch the carriage go. Thomas came back on a Wednesday. No announcement. No letter. Agnes appeared in the doorway of the library with an expression she had clearly been rehearsing and said only, "Conservatory." Vivienne set down her book. Did not run. Walked at a pace she would later be unable to account for. He was at the table. Coat still on. The board between them, pieces exactly as they'd left them. She had not touched it in 9 days, and neither, apparently, had he. He sat down across from her, looked at the board, then at her. Your move, he said. She had been waiting 9 days to hear those 2 words. She had catalogued the waiting, named it, examined it from every angle. She had not been able to make it smaller. She reached across and moved her queen. Check. Thomas looked at the board for a long moment. Then something shifted in his face. Not the managed expression, not the careful gait, the real thing unguarded, which she had only seen once before and had been turning over in her hands ever since. He moved his king 1 square, out of check, into the only open space available. There, he said quietly. That's where I am. She understood. She had always understood. She simply hadn't, until now, allowed herself to. I know, she said. I've known for a long time. He reached across the board, not for a piece, for her hand, resting at the table's edge. He held it the way he held everything, carefully, and with the full weight of his attention. Outside, the gray mare moved in the far paddock. The afternoon light came through the glass in long stripes. The house settled around them. The second stair, the east beams, all of it ordinary, all of it, finally enough. 1 year later, the chessboard was still in the conservatory. No game had been finished. Every game had been continued. There was a small difference, and Vivienne had spent a year learning it. She passed the window on a Tuesday morning in April, light coming through in the particular way it did at that hour, falling across the table in a single stripe. The white queen stood at the board's center, upright, where she had placed her. She went in, sat down, looked at the position they'd left it in last, 3 days ago, interrupted by rain and Agnes, and something that needed attending to that neither of them could now remember. She moved her bishop. Thomas appeared in the doorway 7 minutes later. Coat off, the particular unhurried pace of a man who was, for the first time in his life, not going anywhere. He looked at the board. Then at her. You opened with the bishop, he said. I did. Bold. I've been practicing. He sat down across from her. The morning light moved between them. He studied the board with the attention he gave everything. Unhurried, precise, complete. She watched him do it. She had memorized the exact way he considered a position. Both hands flat on the table. Always both hands. As though the game deserved the care. She did not find this alarming anymore. She found it with some quiet and permanent certainty, like coming home to something she had always known was there, and had simply, finally, stopped pretending she couldn't see. If you've ever looked at something every day and called it by the wrong name, not because you didn't know, but because knowing meant choosing, this one was for you. Some things don't announce themselves. They simply wait with extraordinary patience until you're ready to stop looking away. You were never confused. You were just afraid. There's a difference. And now you know.